All right, folks, well, that's 3:15. Welcome to the Term 2 Central Queensland GEG for this year. So this particular episode is going to be a roundtable. If you're new to GEGs, they're communities of educators who share, inspire and empower each other to meet the needs of students through technology solutions, both in the classroom and beyond. And certainly this term, it's been beyond the conventional classroom anyway. So the GEGs are run by educators, for educators, and although Google is there, it's there as a primary partner. The GEGs are independent communities, and that's why we'll sometimes get into things that are other than Google. We're indebted to have with us to present this afternoon, Rolf Fotenhauer, Michelle Hills, Chris Betcher and Jessica Ryan, and they're going to present on a range of topics for both primary schools and colleges. Look, I guess for me, the basis of this roundtable is that we know that in a week's time, all our Queensland school kids are going to be back in their classrooms, resuming classes with their teacher face-to-face. Teachers have done an outstanding job transitioning to remote learning this term, and along the way, many of them have picked up some new skills, a whole new suite of skills. Skills with different apps, perhaps even different pedagogies that they've adopted. But for me, this is a time for reflection, because what we need to work out was what was successful, what was a fail. And fails are good, don't get me wrong. The thing we need to do with fails is to reflect on them and make the changes that are required and adapt as required. So in a couple of weeks' time, what can we use in our face-to-face classrooms that we didn't use before? What things can we do differently, even if we've got to do it in rotations because we've only got 5 or 6 iPads in our class? What can we do to up the ante with our ICT capabilities across our classrooms? So look, without any further ado, let me introduce firstly is Rolf Fotenhauer. Now, Rolf is from TAFE South Brisbane, and Rolf is going to talk about the secret sauce in remote learning. So I'm just going to make Rolf a presenter here, and I'll hand over to Rolf. All yours, Rolf.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Let me start by, I do work for TAFE Queensland, but for the last 3 years I've been overseas, and my experience with remote learning began at the beginning of this year. Now, I went to the Lao PDR, and I taught adults there at the Institute of Foreign Affairs, English. And I introduced remote learning to them as a way of supplementing their classroom learning. And that went very well, except that I found I ran it actually for 9 weeks. 9 weeks. And then coronavirus hit, and I came back to Australia, and then I continued with them, which I still am doing now. Remote learning all the way back to Laos. And what the secret sauce of allowing them to interact remotely and be engaged, totally engaged with their teacher, has been that a certain amount of prerequisite work has been done with them. First of all, the teacher has to have some sort of rapport with the students. It's not possible to have a remote connection with your students unless you've got a degree of rapport to begin with. So my work with them in class establish that rapport to the point where I can work with them remotely. I don't use a lot of video in my lessons with them. I find that a bit limiting, particularly if you're doing across time zones. It's a bit limiting. However, I am also using Google Classroom quite a lot, and setting assignments. One of the difficulties I find is the lower level they are. I teach level 1, level 2, and level 3, all at the same time, which is very unusual. It isn't done here in Queensland. However, overseas it is. So there are challenges with all of those. The difficulty with the level 1s is their level of English. I'm giving them instruction in English that they don't understand. So that's to overcome that, I have to apply some teaching that helps them to understand what instructions are. The other thing that was very, very helpful for them is as of the beginning of this year, I actually introduced a computer course to them because they didn't have a computer course. They didn't even have computers. So they learned quite a lot in 9 weeks to be able to do remote learning, right? So that was very important, that they have some sort of knowledge about the devices they're using. I discovered, and this is true also of my students here in Queensland that I teach, is a lot of them you're going to do over a mobile phone, but they don't even know much about their mobile phone. They're very ignorant of the very machine that they have with them 24 hours a day. They don't know much about it. So I have to teach them a lot about the very device they're using. And if you're using, if they're using devices like a tablet or a laptop, then the knowledge escalates. So the higher levels that I deal with are reasonable. I can deal with them very well. And motivation is a major, major factor. So the lessons that that I give have to be extremely motivating and engaging for them. And that is a massive challenge for the teacher. I find that extremely challenging given the fact that they, like we, use a lot of textbook type material. That material is not easy to put online straight away. It takes a bit of work to put that up there. So I have to use other ways to teach the same thing. That means I need to have good connection with and resource material already that's online that I can use. Fortunately, I already had developed quite a bank of material, not just one provider of online material, but a number of sources that I use. One provider is good. They provide the stuff you need, but your students are varied and they have varied needs. They had varied ways of dealing with the material. So to keep them engaged means a variety of sources is definitely a good thing. But very difficult for the teacher, I have to admit. It's an extremely time sucking activity for the teacher to do all this. Virtually, you're running a class like 24 hours a day. It is very intensive. That's my experience anyway. The other thing too is a secret that I found. One thing that doesn't work very well is changing routines. You find something new, you put a new routine in to make use of that, and then they get confused. This is true here too, but even more if you're teaching English as a foreign language, to keep these instructions simple and keep them in doing. Once you've established a routine, they tend to follow it okay, but you change it just a little bit, difficulty in following again. And that means a lot of questions for you, which means a lot of time for you. When your load is already heavy, I don't want to be engaged in long drawn out discussions with every individual student, because that's what has to happen. I don't have the luxury of being in class and explaining to the whole class. So you have to explain it to the student one by one, which is a real challenge. That's about it. The other thing that I think is necessary when doing remote learning is not only do you have to have face-to-face at the beginning of your course, but you have to have one at the end as well, because there's parts of any course that will require group work, pair work, a discussion between the students that really is outside the possibility of online. So my teaching, I got a lot of that. I find that's the most effective way of teaching. So I intend to put a lot more effort into to face-to-face at the end of the course, maybe only a few weeks, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but that's where that would go. That's about it for me.
Yeah, that's great, Rolf. Thanks for that. Look, I'm sure, even though you're talking about teaching adults, everything you've talked about there would be echoed by teachers from primary school, where they're dealing with preps, and even younger kids through to high school. Most of those thoughts are probably on the minds of everyone who's been involved in online or remote learning over the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Yes.
Does anyone want to add anything to Rolf's comments from their context? Laura, Raina, Chris, Michelle?
I'll just add, I think one of the things we've got to be really careful of is that when we move from a physical face-to-face experience to a virtual experience, we don't simply try and replicate that we actually take advantage of the fact that we're in a different environment. We can do different things. Some things won't be as good as what we used to do in a physical face-to-face environment. Other things will be better. We actually open up new possibilities. And I think one of the interesting things that we need to make sure we don't lose from this experience is that when we go back to a physical face-to-face situation, that what were the things that were actually really good about the virtual experience, and can we leverage those, and can we actually learn from the experience and take some of the good stuff and not lose that?
Yeah. Laura?
Yeah, I sort of share that. I get that experience of, because I too really like using group work and getting kids to bounce ideas off each other, and that difficulty with engaging with them, and where you might have a class where everyone loves talking normally, as soon as they're in front of a computer and by themselves, they're not as open to sharing their ideas. So, you know, even just changing the way I question things, like I ask questions, is something I think I'll take back to the classroom. Instead of like, you could normally say, oh, who has any questions? And people put their hands up. I find myself having to say instead, okay, I want 3 questions from the class before we move on, just to give them that extra direction that might need, and that extra prompting to turn their microphones on and contribute, or type in the little chat window, or whatever it might be.
Look, that's great. Thanks, Laura. So that's some great feedback. Rolf, thanks very much for your input there. So next up, we have Michelle Hills. Now, Michelle is from St. Luke's Anglican School in Bundaberg, and she's going to give us some insights on digital journals with Google Classroom. So give me half a sec, Michelle, and I will make you a co-host, and over to you.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me this afternoon. Just thought I'd like to contribute and share some ideas on digital journals. So digital journals it's a new thing for us to be doing. We quite often set assignments and different tasks in Google Classroom for the students, but we were looking for something to replace basically the workbook. So, you know, this term for the 5 weeks we're studying very in-depth on adaptation, science, plants and animals adaptation. So we needed a way to try and keep all the student work together and so that we could access it and provide them with the learning materials, knowing that they weren't all probably going to do it exactly when we would like them to. So we wanted a way to keep their work organised and so that we could still see what they were doing. We do have other platforms such as Seesaw that we use, and we had thought about getting the students to do, you know, work in their exercise books and take a photo of it and post it to us, but it really felt quite tedious, and the quality of, you know, photos that students often send through of their work is not always fabulous. So we decided to put together a digital journal. So I'm just going to go to present my screen. Hopefully this is working now.
That's all good, yep.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I'm just going to go to present this. So at the moment, these are some of the benefits that we have found of using a digital journal so far. So saves paper, the big obvious one, accessibility to student work at all times for teachers, accessibility to learning materials for students. So even when they're absent from school, so looking at when they're returning, and we're going to follow on with doing some of this, that if they're away for whatever reason, that they can still access their learning material. It helps to keep the learning materials organised and eliminates the risk of students losing materials. Easy to keep track of work completion, increased student engagement we've found. It's been really great. It's interactive. We've been able to insert links, videos, images, etc. Our support staff, we actually make them a co-teacher, our teaching assistant. So she's able to access all the student material as well. And when she's been working one-on-one, she can see it, knows exactly where they're up to and can walk them through as well. So that's been fantastic. And it's been really great for differentiation. So, you know, we're able to insert audio instructions to make, you know, elaborate more. And students can use voice to text apps, things like that. So it's, that's been some of the great benefits that we've found so far. So I'm just going to show you one of the journals. Sorry, wrong one. So this is just a demo class I created. So this is the original journal that we came up with. So I'll show you this one. And what we did, this was our entire 5-week unit. So it started off, you know, we started off with the title page and we've gone right through all the way down. There's, you know, 20 plus slides, there's 30 slides, I think, something like that, where it actually even incorporates their assessment tasks. So it goes right through. And it's just been great. You know, we can easily see if a student's not on track. I can pop in a comment, you know, I can just use the comment section here and say, can you please, you know, work on slide 2, or can you please elaborate on your ideas in slide 3? It's been really great to pinpoint it and just to be able to scroll through quite easily. So this one here, for example, I'll just try and enlarge it so that you can see it a bit easier too. It's probably really big now. But basically, you know, we set this as background images because, you know, students are really, they bump things all the time, basically, on computers. So we set this as a background, all these little pretty things that we didn't want them to be able to move. And then we inserted just the editable pieces, such as text boxes for them. But, you know, there's the instructions. And then there's their text box where they can type in there, and then over there's a clickable link, and that actually took them to a separate Google slide, which was the lesson content, and it also had videos embedded in that Google slide. So that was, you know, an all-encompassing lesson. They had the whole lesson there, and then they could do their work and we could see them and give them feedback. So that's how we're using that. Another way that we could do it, so here's one that was, you know, it's quite fiddly. I'll shrink it down a little bit so you can see it out view. But so there it is. You know, we've put the questions in. They can't move those questions, but they can just click in the text boxes there. So, and that's where they can write. And then down here, you know, we've asked them to highlight an answer. So, you know, the kids have picked up some really great skills. They were good already with technology, but I feel like this has taken them up a level again now as well. You know, they've discovered a whole lot more tools, and, you know, they now know how to duplicate slides more and insert slides and use all the little highlighting, inserting text box and images. And I've found that they're doing things off their own accord now as well. They'll insert a little link and say, hey, Mrs. Hills, have a look at what I found when we did this activity. So it's been really, really great for that. So that's kind of how we've used that. And yeah, we've gone right down all the way through to assessment tasks. But, you know, it's been great. We can do images and they can label, you know, parts of a plant. So it's been really great for that. I will show you, so that's a 5-week journal. Moving forward, I don't believe that I'd do a 5-week journal. That's something that we have taken away from this. So I'll just go back here. I'm going to show you the English journal instead. So here we go, the English one. So this is probably moving forward how I would prefer to do it instead, is just start it off with, you know, 1 or 2 activities or just 1 week's worth of activities. And then we will be using the slip and slide add-on is what we'll be using now. I've only learnt about that one in the last few weeks, and I just love that. And so I think that's the way we'll go moving forward. So this one here, we've only got the 2 slides, the title page, 1 slide of activities, and there was another one. And, you know, we could have lots of blank slides like that, but yeah, just starting off really simple and then use the slip and slide extension to keep adding, just to give us that little bit more flexibility. It's something that we did have to go back and change a little bit with the science journal. A few times we felt that we had gaps and we really wanted to cover this again, so we just had to assign them as separate activities. Rather than keeping it all in one journal. So I'll go and share this. So this is basically how we built it. This is a little instruction that we used. Basically, build a working page in Google Slides, and then we download the slide as a PNG, create a new slide, and then upload the PNG as your background. And that way then you can add your editable pieces, so your text boxes. Then go ahead and set that as an assignment in Google Classroom, and remember to select make a copy for each student. And then from there, use slip and slide add-on to insert extra pages. So that's where we'll be going moving forward. So I still think that there is a place for our exercise books. And certainly we wouldn't do as many of these worksheet style activities. You know, normally we love the cooperative activities and lots of hands-on discussions. We're very much missing that. But I definitely think that digital journals have a lot of value, and we've got a lot out of it ourselves. And I think the students have got a lot out of it in the last few weeks. That's about it.
Michelle, that looks great. You know, obviously some really carefully thought through processes that you've used there. And look, if you're happy, can I get you to just maybe share that with me, and I might put it as a link on our YouTube when it comes out as a live product, and people could get access to it if you're happy to do that.
Yeah, that's fine, sure.
Laura last term did a classroom presentation, so I think she's champion at the bit to say something here.
Just with regards to when you're talking about the digital notebook thing, my first thought was, oh, that slip and slide add-on, I wonder if he knows about that. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
The other thing that might make your lives a bit easier with regards to backgrounds and not having things that students can click on, I've just been learning how to use the master view in Google Slides. So you can insert text boxes and elements in there, and it becomes part of the slide that the kids can't then access. So it saves having to download the PNG and set as background thing as well. So that might be something you could have a play with as well to make your life a little bit easier.
Thank you. I have actually read lots about the master slide, but I haven't played with that yet. So it's not enough hours in one's day at the moment to keep. I could spend weeks doing this, but yeah, thank you, Laura. That's certainly on my radar.
Look, that's great, Michelle. Thank you, and thank you for joining us from St Luke's, because it finally makes the Central Queensland GEG the way it ought to be, which is encompassing all teachers, all schools, all sectors. So I really do appreciate you coming in and presenting for us. So look, now we have Chris Betcher. So Chris is the Program Manager for G Suite Adoption with Google. We were lucky to have Chris join us and present last term, and fortunately he's back talking about exploring the idea of being original.
Hi, Paul. Yeah, sorry, my internet just dropped out, so I've just switched to 4G, so hopefully it's still working. I'm just going to try and share my screen. I've actually got two screens to share here, so hopefully I can make this work. There you go. You guys see my screen okay?
Yep, that's all good.
Okay, so I just want to just talk to you about a new feature or newish feature in Google Classroom that you may have tried yet, I'm not sure. It's called Originality Reports. So I've just created a classroom here, and I've only got one student in this class at the moment. That student's name is, funnily enough, Bart Simpson. But if I go into the classwork page here, you'll see that I've got a task here. It's an essay writing task that I've created, and it's still in draft mode. So I just want to release this to the student here. So I'll just go and open up the editing mode. So the task is simply this: write a short essay on what you think originality means. And there's two things I want to turn on in here. One is to turn on this thing called Originality Reports. And you can see when I tick this box here, a little thing that pops up and says, I have 3 assignments with Originality Reports left. As the teacher, I can use this originality feature on up to 3 assignments per classroom. Okay, so I'm going to use one of my 3 attempts now by turning that on here. And the other thing I just want to show you is to attach a rubric. Now, a rubric, as you know, is a guide to grading a student work. So I'm going to click on the rubric button here, and I can create a rubric from scratch by clicking on Create Rubric. And it brings up this screen. And on this screen, I can create my criteria and give my point values. I can create a number of point values here. I can add extra criteria down here and create the point values. And I just have to go and fill this in. But I've already got one I've created. And in fact, I've created one for another class. So I'm just going to go and reuse that one. So I can say reuse rubric. And it's actually in another class over here called the lesson library. And here it is here. It's in this thing called originality task, and it's attaching this rubric here. So you can see what I've just done is I've attached a rubric that I created from a previous class, and I'm just reusing it in this class. So if I pop in there and just open that up, you'll see this is what the rubric looks like. This particular one, I'm grading the student on 3 different aspects of their writing, their ability to persuade an audience, how original they were, and their spelling and grammar. And there's a series of 4 criterion for each of those. So that's the rubric that's attached to this task, and also the originality report that I'm turning on for this task. You can see I'm sending it out to 1 student. It's worth 10 points, and it's due next Friday. Let's assign that. Okay, so it's assigning that to the student. You notice I didn't actually give the student any work. I didn't hand them a worksheet. I didn't give them a document. I've simply given them a task. Now, what I'd like to do is, if I can figure out how to do this, Paul, is to stop sharing this screen and switch to a different screen, which is this one. And can you guys see that new screen now?
Yep, that's all good.
Okay, so what you're now looking at here, this is the student screen. You can see, hopefully you can see little Bart Simpson up in the corner there. So in the students page now, the student now goes to the classwork. And why am I not seeing that task here? Maybe I just need to refresh that page. And here it comes. Thank goodness for 4G, huh? So here's the student work. Here's the originality task. So as a student, now I'm not looking at the teacher view, I'm looking at it as a student. I go into the originality report. Okay, the teacher's given me assignment. Let's have a look at it. I click the view assignment button and let's get rid of that. And so I can see here that this is the task. Write a short essay on what you think the term originality means. And I can see the rubric here. So I actually kind of know what it is I'm being graded on. So if I look at the persuasion element here, here's the advanced, substantial, developing and elementary aspects of the persuasion. I can see the originality one there and I can see the spelling one there. So I'm pretty clear as a student what it is in fact I'm being asked to do. That's important. And now as a student, I've actually written this assignment and here it is here. There's my original work here. I'm just going to give it a title, my original work. Okay, just oops, I might even spell original correctly. How about that? So we'll do that, maybe make that a heading. Okay, so there's my piece of work that I'm going to hand into the teacher. So what I would do as a student, I'd go back to my assignment and over here where I can attach a piece of work to submit back, I'd say add or create. Well, I'm clearly going to add something I've already done. So I'd click on Google Drive. That would then take me into, usually it starts with your recent list, which is handy because there it is right there. So I'll click on my recent work and it's now attaching the original work file to this task. Now, because the teacher had enabled originality reports for me as a student, I have this little thing down here that says originality reports, run. Text from submissions will be compared to edited text on the web. Let's have a look. So I click the run button and it tells me I've got 3 of 3 originality report runs available. And I don't want you to get confused on this. As the teacher, I can attach originality reports to up to 3 assignments. But as the student, on each of those 3 assignments, I can run an originality check 3 times. So it's 3 and 3, okay? And that confuses some people because it's like both 3, but in fact, it's up to 3 assignments and up to 3 runs per assignment. Okay, so I'm just going to run this one time. So I'll click that button and it's now running. And what's actually happening now in the background is it's taking the, you can see there's 25% done. It's taking this essay and it's essentially Googling the entire essay against the entire internet. And it's coming back with an originality report. And it's going to tell me which passages from there. You see there, view originality report. It was done at 15:47 today. So I'll click that. That'll open in a new tab. And it will put my work, a student, sorry, as a student. Come on, internet. I don't know about you guys. Ever since we went into COVID, my internet has been so flaky. So you can see it's run this check here on this piece of work, and it's actually flagged 2 different passages, 3 different passages here. So this first one here, if I click on that, over on the side here, it'll say, well, here's what you wrote, here's your passage, and here's the top web match. And it's actually flagged this passage, creativity as ability to think in new and original ways to solve problems, blah, blah, blah.
Is it just me or can everyone see Chris's screen? No, I can't see his screen.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I thought I'd better let you know.
Yeah, no, thanks. Zoom, where's Zoom, Zoom, share. Thanks, sorry about that, guys. Hopefully, tell me if you're seeing that screen.
Well, it's come out now, yep.
Okay, thanks. What I've done there, when I click that originality report, it's actually given me this, this summary of my writing here. And it's telling me that this passage here that I've clicked on, or if I click on the other one there, it's actually telling me whereabouts on the internet that came from. So this passage here, but according to Wharton Professor Adam Grant in his book Originals, that actually comes from medium.com, how to create original work. There's an actual link there and I can click that page and I can actually go to the article and actually see the article where that student had found that piece of writing. So that's kind of handy. There's another quote there. That one's coming from the same article. This one here is coming from sciencedaily.com. So what this originality report is, now remember I'm the student, I'm not the teacher. The purpose of the originality report
not to catch the student out, although obviously it could do that if the student plagiarizes a lot of work. The purpose of the originality report is to give the student a tool where they can run their own checks on originality. So what I'd do now if I was a student here, I'd come back and I'd say edit, and I'd bring up my actual document, which will load there. So here is my actual Google Doc. And now I can go back and I can look at the side here and I can see what was, let's get rid of that. I can see what was flagged, and I can come back into my document and actually fix it up. And I can do this as many times as I like, up to 3 times. Sorry, not as many times as I like, up to 3 times. And you can go through here, you can see the flagged passages, and you can go back to your document and actually fix that work. You can switch back to the report, you can switch back to your document. So what the student would do is they'd go and fix up their work, and then usually, to go back to classroom, they would then either hand in their work if they fixed it enough, or they could fix their work up and run a second originality report, and that will run again now, and it'll give them another version of their originality check. And like I said, the student can run that 3 times, and when they eventually submit their work, let's hand that in now. And we'll try and go back to the teacher view. Sorry, I got too many screens open here. I'm just sharing that screen and just go back and share my first screen, which was that one.
It's trying to load, Chris, but
I think Chris is frozen.
I think he's frozen.
Oh, I'm back. Sorry, I can't get used to Zoom. I'm too used to Meet. Have you got me?
Yep. Yep.
All right. I'll just go back to my last little bit here, Paul, and that is to go to this screen here. Can you see my screen again now?
Yeah, it's loaded now.
Okay. So I'm back on the teacher's view now. Hopefully you can see that. So as the teacher now, I go into my originality report. I can see that my one student has handed it in. And when I go and click on that, I can see, okay, here's the student's work. And when I click on that work and go and look at it, it will open up in the grading interface inside Classroom. And again, just waiting for it to load because my internet is on a very slow connection today, apparently. Because while I'm waiting for that to load, here it comes. Here it comes. Okay, so here's the piece of writing. And you can see under here, right in the top corner here, it'll tell me this work has 3 flagged passages. The student didn't actually go and fix them. If I can click on that, it will take me in and show me, as the teacher, here's the originality report as the teacher. So not only can the student see the originality report, but the teacher can see the originality report as well. And so that everyone's on the same page in terms of who's done what. And if I go into, sorry, Paul, I don't know why my internet's so slow today. The very last thing I just want to show you here in terms of grading this, because I'm grading against a rubric. If I open up on the side here, you can see, open up here, here's my criteria for stations. So I think student has to make persuasive arguments, so I can click substantial. I go down here for originality. And the student, yes, most of the work was originality, but there were still a few passages that weren't. And the spelling, if I go in here and look at the spelling was actually quite good. So I give them top marks for spelling. And I come up here and it's actually giving me a grade there. And even though those marks add up to 12, because I wanted the mark out of 10, it actually scales it to me to 8.33 out of 10. So hopefully that gives you a little insight into 2 features inside Classroom. One is the, just stop sharing my screen. How do I stop sharing my screen?
Just go up the top, stop share.
I don't know why, but when I use this, like Zoom just disappears.
That's probably because you're in full screen mode. Look,
Yeah,
can I throw over to the teachers? You know,
there we go.
Can you see yourselves using that as part of your classroom when you return face to face?
I actually did use I haven't used originality reports with my students yet, but I have used the rubric side of things. I actually found I had to add it after the fact with an assignment with my year 8s, so I was able to get their work back to them while they were at home. So they submitted their task via the classroom like they normally do, but I added the criteria and the rubric after the assessment is initially posted. And I then, for their work as well, I used the Kami extension so I could write all over the document and I gave them, I think when I, actually, if you like, I'll share my screen and I'll show you what that assignment looked like in my Google.
This is annotating it with Kami. Yeah.
Yeah, so I shall share. Okay. So Paul, if you let me share my screen, I can show you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You caught me unawares there.
Keep you on your toes.
So, Laura, more. I don't have.
I think I saw something before. Chris has been made the host of the meeting. I saw that pop up before.
More. Yeah.
Yes, so I saw before that Chris has been made the host now.
Yeah, Chris, can you just go over? Can you do that?
Yeah, if you tell me how to do it.
Can you go down to participants, down the bottom?
Yeah, manage participants.
Turn that on and it pops out. And find me and.
So who do I want to make? Is it Aaron I want to make a?
Yes, just a co-host, yep.
Make Laura. Laura, sorry, Laura.
Yeah. Erin had flipped out if suddenly she was presenting.
Oh, she might be flipping out then.
Okay, so screen 2, which is this one. So that's my Google Classroom that you can see. So this was the assignment I had for my year 8s. And so if I go in, and so what I did to actually return their work, I had the other challenge of trying to get a 15-point scale that is year 8 criteria into a Google rubric. They don't go up to 15. So I used points and things. I made it work. So what I did to give them their work back was actually down here, I just gave them the hyperlink. Oh, where's my mouse gone? Sometimes my mouse decides to stop working. I've dropped it one too many times, I think. I keep picking on Emma because she's just the first in the alphabet. So when students had their work returned to them, they could see my actual writing all over their task. And I could, because I didn't have a way to get their task sheets back to them, this was a way to get the task sheets back to them in a digital way for them. So I'm in future going to keep using this rubric thing. As a college, we're actually moving to using Turnitin across the entire college. We just use it for the 10s to 12s at the moment, but we're going to do it across the school next semester. But for this little chunk of our lives, it was very, very handy. The other thing, just really, while I'm sharing, the other thing that I have been using that I'm definitely going to keep using in the future is Google Forms, and specifically the branching options that Google Forms has. So this is for my year 10s, where we went through and we're talking about Australian poetry and Australian identity. And this is where I decided to branch it. So they just could choose one poem, and then the questions there were for that particular poem. So nearly everyone's done it. That's good. Yeah, so that's definitely a tool I'm going to keep using when we go back to normal, as it were.
That's great, Laura. So thank you for sharing that. And Chris, thank you for sharing the originality reports and the rubrics, because I think I touched on originality reports last term when we did our GEG, but didn't go down the rubrics. And I think that's something that everyone could really grab with both hands and use, so that kids know exactly what they're being graded on. Look, our last session this afternoon will be from Jessica Ryan. Now, Jessica's from Chanel College in Gladstone. Now, Jess isn't with us this afternoon. She's got a staff meeting that she had to attend. So I have her information. So if you just bear with me, I'm going to share. So she has recorded this via Screencastify. And where are we? Just up here. I'm hoping you can see that. Is that all good?
Yep, can see that.
Yes.
A little blurry, but we can see it.
Hi everyone, my name's Jess Ryan. I work at Chanel College. I'm a science teacher and a study of religion teacher, and I'm happy to do this little presentation today for the GEG Central Queensland Remote Learning Roundtable. I have recently learnt how to use Jamboard in this online learning time, and just making a short video to show you how I use Jamboard. Jamboard is a Google extension, which when I locate to use it, it's a Google app that I've downloaded, and I find it here next to my image. So there's the Jamboard. I've downloaded the extension and put it on my computer, as have all of my students. I teach junior science and senior science, senior biology, and I've used Jamboard in both of those classes. I've preloaded some to show you how I've used them. One way I used Jamboard was to get the students to prepare for an assessment item and look at science in everyday life. And this first one was called Radiation in my Year 9 Science. This was the first slide that I had prepared. And these yellow tabs can be made by using a sticky note. So this was something that the students told me. I put here my learning goal and then how I wanted them to do it. So I made a Screencastify and I had this as my background. And the students told me, because they had pre-read their text, that we use it for food, medicine and safety. I then split up my class into groups of 3, and each student had to research one of the types of radiation and write it on their group's Jamboard. So this is group 1, here's group 2, group 3, group 4, group 5, and this is my example. I was trying to teach them how to insert pictures as well as write things and make it look aesthetically pleasing. They didn't quite get there, but I was quite happy with how they used it. So how I did this was, you can only write in these tabs and they're like post-it notes. So if I go back to my front page, and you can obviously pick them up and slide them around. Here is how you create the sticky note, and you type in here. And then as you press save, you can pick the colour. So I told the students to pick a colour that was their own, and that yellow was the teacher's colour. And then this goes on your page and you move it from there. So that was a way that I used Jamboard in a live lesson when the students were on a Google Meet with me, and I had this and shared the document with them. And then I gave them that to complete after the lesson finished. Another way that I've used Jamboard is in a pre-recorded Screencastify. So here's my Screencastify that I've pre-recorded, and I'm using Jamboard to explain half-life to them. So I think that I can play this, mute myself, and you can see that as I'm teaching, I'm moving the numbers of my graph. I don't know how to get that. Moving my numbers on my graph as I'm talking to them. And there we go. So I'm telling them about how to do the axes on their graph in a live lesson. So to prepare, I'd already prepared this page and already had inserted the axes figures, and I had my script of what I was going to teach. As I'm talking to them, I move the Jamboard features around, and I've also handwritten. I'm finding that at this time, the students like to also see handwritten things. They like to see from their teacher that it's also not all digital. So I've done this in a live, and then you can see as I'm talking to the kids, I am graphing my data to show them the half-life of the compound. So I'll grab my pen and I continue to talk and explain it. So I've used that as well. So I can go, I'll stop showing, oh, here we go. I think this is where I start, and I start explaining to them where I'm going to put my points for the half-life. So here's my blank one that I've done, and how I started. I preloaded this Jamboard, and I preloaded the labels, and you can just pick up labels and move them, which is what I did in the live. And then I continued to go through the calculations with them. And then, excuse my handwriting, I had myself here. And so we were doing these pages and working out the answers, and we worked out these live from the graph that I had drawn, which was on here. So that's another way that I did that as a live. And I also use Jamboard in my biology. So I teach senior biology once a week. The students, when they were learning at home, they're back now, which is fantastic. When they were learning at home, they could send me a question for one of the lessons for myself to prepare the answer. And we're doing feedback loops at the moment. And this was the two questions. What are the 5 types of receptors, Miss Ryan? And what are the different stimuli? So I wrote the children's questions first, and then as a class, they, in the Google Meet, told me their answers, and I typed the answers up for them, and we answered those 2 questions. I went through this preloaded diagram to show them the order of the response, and then I answered their 2 questions, and that would have been used maybe for 5 minutes in class. So Jamboard, I've used Jamboards 3 ways. I've done it to explain questions from my senior classes. I've done them as live lessons to show how to draw graphs and interpret graphs in science. And then I've done them as a lesson where all of the students collaborate and create a Jamboard on the topic that I have told them. I hope that this little short video helps you maybe to use Jamboard in your teaching. I've found it's really great to break up the different modes of activities that we can do online when the kids are working remotely. Thank you, Paul, for the opportunity to share, and I look forward to seeing what everybody else has to say as well. Thank you. Bye.
Paul, we can't hear you.
Thank you, Aaron. Try again. Is anyone using Jamboard? Want to make any comment about Jamboard? Chris?
I mean, I'm not using it the same way as you guys do in an actual classroom as much as I would like to, but it's a great tool. It's a collaboration space.
Yep.
We've had a lot of requests to integrate Jamboard with Classroom and with Meet. So those sorts of things are obviously things we think about.
Yeah, I think that the takeaway for me there was that Jess can be in another place this afternoon, so she can be just like you guys are in a classroom. You can't be with all the kids all the time, so in rotations you can use Screencastify to record something, drop it into Google Classroom and say, like, this is what I want you to do, and you're effectively with those kids while you then go off and work with other groups of kids. And I think that's the power of Screencastify.
Yeah, definitely.
Look, we're just about out of time. I just want to share this with you. So we've had Michelle, we've had Rolf, we've had Laura talking about us Google Classroom, and that's certainly what I would have done this afternoon had we had enough time. I'm not sure whether everyone has seen seen this.
And
so this is a video that I will share the link with on our YouTube channel by Michelle Ferret. Now, Chris posted information about this on Twitter a few weeks ago, and I dropped it into our Ideas X sharing platform, how to organise Google Classroom. If you haven't checked out Michelle and what she does with Google Classroom, you ought to take the 13 minutes that's involved there to have a look at it. I think it's gold. I think it's some of the best information about organising Google Classroom. Chris, you want to add anything?
No, she's really good. She's great. She's got a whole series of videos. There was one thing I want to add, Paul. It's kind of on just a slightly different thing. But when in that last video, Jess mentioned she teaches biology. I don't know if you guys have seen this recently. We announced this last Friday. If you go to Google on your phone now and you do a search for something like skeletal system or I don't know, a nervous system or something like that, you actually get these little things in the search now where it says view in 3D. And so this is really hard to show on a phone. But when you load that up, it actually loads up a 3D model of the skeleton, which you can, I'll pull it down, you can move that around, you can pinch and expand, and you can even click on the little button to say view in your space, and then tap like point your phone at the floor, tap the floor, and now you've got a virtual AR skeleton standing next to you, which you can use your phone and look around. So it's built right into the phone now. So it's a nice little tool for teachers of biology, I think.
Yeah, look, that's really powerful. So so thanks, Jess, for doing that, and look, thanks for everyone for your participation in our roundtable this afternoon. As I said earlier, teachers have done a great job transitioning to remote learning. For some classes, it's brought a different level of engagement because some of the kids, it's the stuff that makes class a little bit more exciting. You know, we do have classes where perhaps not the level of technology is always there and always available for kids to use. And I know of kids that are a little bit disappointed in going back to face because they love what they've been doing over the last few weeks. So that's got to be a good thing. I think we also need to remember that technology is anything that wasn't around when we were born. And that's different to what the kids are, because the kids are obviously coming a lot after us. You know, I'm a lot older than most of you. And, you know, the stuff I might get excited is the stuff that kids just find ho-hum, you know, because it's just been there with them throughout their life. So we have to find the things that are going to really tap into what they experience and what they want to do. And as we go about incorporating technology effectively in our face-to-face classrooms, it's got to be done purposefully. It's got to be done so that it enables better teaching and learning. ICT capabilities is not an option. It's a general capability that underpins all our learning areas, and I think we need to keep that in mind. Look, I'd like to thank our presenters this afternoon, Rolf, Michelle, Chris and Jessica. Thanks for your input. Thanks for those who've joined us this afternoon. And we'll have another GEG in term 3 with a couple of different twists to it. So if you've got some suggestions on what you would like to see for our term 3 GEG, please just let me know and we'll talk with each of you soon. But thanks again for everyone who's joined us this afternoon.
Thank you, Paul. I've learned a bit today.
And
thanks,
if you've got
Paul,
anything,
thanks for everything you do to keep the GEG going. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Michelle, Laura, if you've got anything that you would like to share back that I can put on under the YouTube channel, please just feel free to share it via email and I'll make it available there. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Paul.